actually haven't done much of a chilli video this year, but this is what I've got to up to now. Not that bad, is it? Now these were sown the end of January and I've had them indoors. Majority of these under the grow lights. I started them off on a bit of heat and I've just allowed them to carry on growing. Now I have got an awful lot of chilli plants. I think it's well over 70. I did start with over 100 seedlings, I think it was. But over time, that's been reduced and I've now got about 70 odd, which is still an awful lot of chillies. But that doesn't make me crazy. It just means I have got plenty of options for all my hot sauces this year. My chilli powders and all the other things that I make with my chillies. Now this one is a padron. Now these are renowned for really good growing, especially at the beginning. And I did get some really good seeds this year. But I'm really proud of this particular chilli plant. Now, as you can see, I don't know whether you can see from there or whether it will actually focus, there is a few little flower heads. Now, because I don't want these to flower at the moment, I am actually going to just take off these little buds. If I leave these on, yes, they will produce fruit quite early, but all the focus will be on producing that fruit instead of focusing on growing better and bigger. Now, I want some really good strong plants this year. So I've been taking off any flowers that have been growing on these plants. Now, a lot of the times these plants will flower because they have been stressed. And it's not that hard to actually stress out a chilli plant. Now, I've got multiple different varieties here, which I'll pop up on the screen. Now, this isn't all of my chilli pepper plants. I have got some red peppers, some bell peppers towards the end as well, and I've got plenty of those. But we've also got them in the other polytunnel. Now, the date today is, I think it's the 21st of April. And it is far too early for these to be down here at this time of year. Chilli peppers really do enjoy a temperature over 10 degrees, especially even through the night. Bringing them out before it is 10 degrees, you are running a risk of your chilli peppers pretty much dying or sulking or taking far longer to grow and stalling the plants than if you'd kept them inside. Now, the only reason I have brought mine down here is simply because I had started to run out of room quite a lot at home, and it was starting to become harder and harder to take care of the chilli plants in the very little space that I have in my home. Now, these were started off in January under grow lights, and they've grown really well. But it got to about 3 weeks ago, I think it was, where half of them I actually started to take outdoors to get some actual sunshine. Now, if you live in the UK, you would have seen and felt the strong winds that we've pretty much had constantly over the last several weeks. And these ones, which are yellower, these are the ones that I actually took outside every single day just so they can get a little bit of sun. I think there was only probably 2 days out the last 2 to 3 weeks that I actually didn't take them out because the weather was absolutely atrocious. Now, these have been in the wind, been in the sun, and the very little bit of rain that we've actually had. And as you can see, some of them have got quite a bit of damage to their leaves. Now, these leaves I can just take off, but majority of the time with that, it's because they've got water on the leaves and then they've been sun scorched. So I'm not too concerned about that. So these can actually just come off because there's no benefit to the plant because it's not going to photosynthesize for that plant. So you can tell pretty much the ones that have actually been going outside. Now, eventually they'll perk up. They're not actually that bad considering. These ones, you can see, they're much darker green, and these are the ones that have been under the artificial lights at home. Now, because chilli plants are world renowned for stressing out as you're first starting to grow them. You will get these little flowers, which again you can just pick off because you want them to focus growing in their final position, not focusing on producing these chillies way before it's time. Now, chillies don't like it overly wet, but they do like a good water too. So long as you are not sitting them in water for hours, days, weeks on end, they should be absolutely fine. Now, some of these chilli seeds have actually done better than others. I think it was the cyclone and the bishop's crown. Those seedlings were absolutely pants. They really did not germinate, no matter how long we actually gave them to carry on growing. We don't normally wait that long for germination off chilli seeds, and most of these were actually germinated within 4 to maybe 5 days. But we actually gave the cyclone and the bishop's crown several weeks. I think it was 3 to 4 weeks to get them to germinate, and we still didn't get much of a germination. In fact, the bishop crown, I think there was 2, maybe 3 that germinated, and the cyclone, out of about 10 or so seeds, there was 1. Now we have those in a different polytunnel, just so I haven't got too much in here, because it won't be long before I'm prepping my beds to start planting all my melons, my Cape gooseberries, and all the other things that I'll be having in this polytunnel. Now, some of the slightly yellower, weakened ones, maybe this one isn't as bad as the other, but really it just needs a bit of a feed. Now, once they're in these pots, because they have been potted on, I think this is the 3rd pot on now that they've actually had, but they do need a little bit more of a feed. So just before I brought them down, they were actually fed with some of the aquarium dirty water. Yeah, so I've got a 5-foot fish tank at home, which I have on a sump, and I squeezed out all those lovely, dirty, smelly sponges into a bucket, and all these plants had a small amount of that feed, just enough to keep them going for a bit longer. Aquarium water and things is just absolutely full of nitrates. All that fish poop is a really good feed. But I will be feeding as well with some natural seaweed. I'm going to buy a bottle of it maybe today, and then just heavily dilute it, just so that these plants have got some of the minerals that they're going to need to keep growing healthily. Now, I can already hear you saying that's an awful lot of chillies. And I can also hear the other half of the chat saying that is far too early to be bringing down chillies here in the UK. It really is far too early, and I am not suggesting that anybody brings their chillies down to a polytunnel or a greenhouse here in the UK. I'm not going to be held responsible for any loss of chillies. There is a massive chance that we could end up losing all of our chilli plants. Because those chilli plants do like a temperature above 10 degrees, we are still getting really quite cold nights here in the UK. But this week, after looking at the weather forecast, most of the nights are about 8, 9, maybe 10 degrees. But there is a couple of nights where the temperature will drop down to about 4 degrees. And one of those nights is actually tonight. So I've got to remember to make sure that I fleece up all these chilli peppers tonight, because they will not like the temperatures as low as that. Now, that fleece is not going to save them because it's the temperature. I don't think we're going to necessarily get a frost. So I might try and actually create a mini grow house within the polytunnel, if I can find some little bits and pieces to do that with. Now, like I said before, we had to do this because the space that we have at our home, we actually need it for something else. And the amount of times of having to take out 10 or so crates every single day and then bring them back out was really starting to get on my nerves. So these chillies will just have to make do, and hopefully out of all these chilli peppers, we'll actually get several that will survive, and then will give us a really good harvest for the rest of the year. Now this year, so long as I get some chilli plants after this, some of them are going to go into these beds here in my polytunnel, pretty much like I did last year. But I'm going to make sure they've got a lot more feed than what they did last year. The new raised beds that I've built in the larger greenhouse, I'm going to hopefully fit between 25 and maybe 30 in that space there. A few are also going into the other polytunnel that is going to get mixed in with tomatoes and our really well established garlic that's already there. There's only going to be a handful that's probably going to go into pots. I find keeping up with pot watering is a little bit of a nightmare, and I've got some drip hoses to come into here for this year, and I've got a drip waterer that I'm going to be installing in the raised beds in the greenhouse. Hopefully this will reduce any issues that I get with watering this year. Now I have got a bit of a mixture this year, and I have gone for several that is a lot hotter. Now I have got several habaneros. I have got habanero yellows, both tall and a short variety, and I've also got a lemon one as well. These are my Scotch bonnets. Now I have grown Scotch bonnets over the years, but this is the first time that I actually am wanting a really good harvest. Obviously Scotch bonnets are really hot, but I think I found one or two hot sauce recipes that I think these Scotch bonnets will really bring an additional heat to those hot sauces. These are actually doing very well. The Scotch bonnets were really actually quite slow at the very beginning, but they really have started to pick on. But as you can see, these are much smaller than, let's say, my padrons. But again, I find padrons grow really quickly and are much larger than a lot of the other plants. I think I've got 9 or 10 of these Scotch bonnets, so that's more than enough. Now when it comes to these chilli plants, whether I keep all of these chilli plants or not is a different story. I have got some friends and family that are happy to take a 1 or 2 off of my hands. There's probably going to be some that maybe not make it, or maybe not even fruit that well. Obviously, I am more than aware that there is an absolute ton more of very hot chilies out there. I'm not after the mega heat ones, to be honest. It's not something I enjoy eating. The Scotch bonnet is probably the hottest I would probably go in general, and I wouldn't be using a ton of those at a time. So, is this going to be a risk that is going to pay off? The likelihood of it is probably no, but I really have got my fingers crossed, my toes and anything else, that these will actually be fine down here. I think undercover I may get away with it a little bit. They certainly wouldn't survive if I put them outdoors at this time of year. This polytunnel gets incredibly hot, and I had the hottest temperature that I think I've ever seen in this polytunnel since building it. I actually had a 60-degree day here not that long ago, when the outdoor temperatures were barely 20s. That is exceptionally hot. Now don't get me wrong, this polytunnel was empty. There was nothing in here whatsoever. The window was closed, the doors were closed, there was no ventilation whatsoever in this polytunnel. And it got to over that 60 degrees. And then on that same night, it got down to minus 0.7. That's a massive swing. So now I've got these in here, and even though it is raining today and it won't be overly hot in here, I've just got to remember to make sure that I open both the polytunnel door and the window every single day to make sure that these chilies don't cook. Now I would like to leave the door open all the time, but I actually have to close it because foxes do get in and they cause an immense amount of damage. So it is something that I have to do every single day. So again, I'm going to reiterate, do not bring your chilies like me down to your polytunnel. And if you do, on your own head be it. I'm not going to be held responsible for anything like that. But if you are growing chilies this year, how is your chilies going this year? Are they better than last year? Or is this maybe the first time that you've actually grown chili plants? What varieties that you keep coming back to time and time again? And is there any new varieties that you are actually trying to grow this year? Let me know in the comments, because there might be a variety there I would like to try in the future. But for now, I'm just going to try and plan a way of keeping these a little bit warmer through the nights for at least another couple of weeks before they go into their final places. Because really, I don't want to lose all the time and effort that I've put into these chilli plants. But unfortunately, I have no choice. So fingers crossed, again, these will be absolutely fine. But obviously, I will show you how they go on over the next couple of weeks.